Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 16 of the Applecast. And in this Applecast, it's kind of a special. I'm going to read an article, from Wolffire Blog Games. And they have a game out, they're independent game maker called Appleshakeguru, and they're working on one right now called Overgrowth. And I found a real interesting article about OpenGL and DirectX. So let me start reading this. It was just posted on the 8th of January, and it's a fairly long article, so let me get started. Why you should use OpenGL and not DirectX. Often, when we meet other game developers and say that we use OpenGL for our game Overgrowth, we're met with stares and disbelief. Why would anyone use OpenGL? DirectX is the future, right? When we tell graphic card representatives that we use OpenGL, the temperature of the room drops by 10 degrees. This baffles us. It's common geek wisdom that standards-based websites, for instance, trounce Silverlight, Flash, or ActiveX. Cross-platform development is smart. No self-respecting geek enjoys dealing with closed standard Word documents or Exchange servers. What kind of bizarro world is this where engineers are not only going crazy over Microsoft's latest proprietary API, but are actively denouncing its open standard competitor? Now, before we dive into the story of why we support OpenGL, let's start with a bit of history. What is OpenGL? Well, in 1982, Silicon Graphics started selling high-performance graphics terminals using a proprietary API called IrisGL. GL is short for Graphics Library. Over the years, IrisGL grew bloated and hard to maintain, until Silicon Graphics took a radical new step. They completely refactored IrisGL and made it an open standard. The competitors could use the new Open Graphics Library, or OpenGL, but in return, they had to help maintain it and keep it up to date. Today, OpenGL is managed by the Kronos Group, a non-profit organization with representatives from many companies that are interested in maintaining a high-quality media API. At the lower level, it's managed by the OpenGL Architecture Review Board, or the ARB. OpenGL is supported on every gaming platform, including Mac, Windows, Linux, PS3 as a GCM wrapper, Wii, iPhone, PSP, and DS. Well, every gaming platform except for the Xbox. Which brings us to our next topic. What is DirectX? Well, ever since MS-DOS, Microsoft has understood that games play an important role in users' choice of operating systems. For this reason, in 1995 they created a proprietary set of libraries in order to encourage exclusive games for their new Windows 95 operating system. These libraries included Direct3D, Direct Input, and Direct Sound, and the entire collection came to be known as DirectX. When Microsoft entered the gaming market in 2001, it introduced the DirectX box, or Xbox for short. The Xbox was a loss leader, losing over $4 billion. But they intended to set the stage to dominate the games market in the next generation. And looking at the game scene now, it's clear that this strategy was a winner. Most major PC games now use DirectX and run on both Windows and Xbox 360. With few exceptions, they don't work on competing platforms, such as PlayStation or the Mac and the Wii. Now, these are significant markets to leave out, bringing us to the big question. Why does everyone use DirectX? Everyone uses DirectX because API choice in-game development is a positive feedback loop, and it was shifted in favor of DirectX in 2005. It's a positive feedback loop because whenever one API becomes more popular, it keeps becoming more and more popular due to network effects. The most important network effects are as follows. The more popular API gets, better support from graphics card vendors and graphics programmers are more likely to already know how to use it. API use was shifted in favor of DirectX by Microsoft's two-pronged DirectX campaign around the launch of the Xbox 360 and Windows Vista, including the spread of FUD about the future of OpenGL and wild exaggerations of the merits of DirectX. Ever since then, the network effects have amplified this discrepancy until OpenGL has almost disappeared entirely from mainstream PC gaming. Now on Windows, it's a fact that the DirectX graphics drivers are better maintained than the OpenGL graphics drivers. This is caused by the vicious cycle of vendor support. As game developers are driven from OpenGL to DirectX by other factors, the graphics cards manufacturers get less bug reports for their OpenGL drivers, extensions, and documentation. This results in shakier OpenGL drivers, leading even more game developers to switch from OpenGL to DirectX. The cycle repeats. It's a fact that more gaming graphics programmers know how to use DirectX than OpenGL, so it's cheaper because there's less training required to make a game using DirectX than OpenGL. This is the result of another vicious cycle. As more game projects use DirectX, more programmers have to learn how to use it. As more programmers learn how to use it, it becomes cheaper for game projects to use DirectX than to use OpenGL. Microsoft initiated a fear, uncertainty, and doubt, aka FUD campaign, against OpenGL around the release of Windows Vista in 2003. Microsoft left the OpenGL Architecture Review Board, showing that they no longer had any interest in the future of OpenGL. Then in 2005, they gave presentations at SIGGRAPH, the Special Interest Group for Graphics, and WinHEC, Windows Hardware Engineering Conference, giving the impression that Windows Vista would remove support for OpenGL except to maintain back compatibility with XP applications. This version of OpenGL would be layered on top of DirectX, causing a dramatic performance hit. This campaign led to panic in the OpenGL community, leading many professional graphics programmers to switch to DirectX. When Vista was released, it backpedaled on its OpenGL claims, allowing vendors to create fast installable client drivers, ICDs, that restore native OpenGL support. The OpenGL board sent out newsletters proving that OpenGL is still a first-class citizen and that OpenGL performs on Vista as good as Direct3D. But unfortunately for OpenGL, the damage had already been done. Public confidence in OpenGL was badly shaking. Now, the launch strategies for Windows Vista and Windows 7 were both accompanied with an immense marketing push by Microsoft for DirectX, in which they showed before and after screenshots of the different DirectX versions. Many gamers now think that switching from DirectX 9 to DirectX 10 magically transforms graphics from stupidly dark to great. As in the comparison above, there's two pictures, as you'll see in the video, from Halo 1 to Crysis. Game journalists proved that there was no difference between Crysis DX9 and Crysis DX10. And that is, DX10 features worked fine with DX9 by tweaking a config file. However, despite its obvious inaccuracies, the marketing had convinced many gamers that DirectX updates are the only way to access the latest graphics features, and that's crap. You don't need DirectX to access the greatest graphics features. Usually OpenGL gets the latest features before DirectX. And while many gamers participate in Microsoft's marketing charade, more savvy graphics programmers like John Carmack refuse to be swept up in it. He put it this way, quote, "Personally, I wouldn't jump at something like DirectX 10 right now. I'd let things settle out a little bit and wait until there's really a strong need for it." So in other words, it was propaganda. It was bullcrap. There is no difference between DirectX 9 and DirectX 10 when running Crysis. Yet, if you make your game in DX 10 or 11, you have to leave out all those XP users. So if you want the latest and greatest graphics for over half of the gamer base out there, you're going to have to be able to install the latest graphics on an XP machine. And the only way to get the latest graphics features on an XP machine is with OpenGL. Now, given that OpenGL has less vendor support, is no longer used in games, is being actively attacked by Microsoft, and has no marketing momentum, why should we still use it? Wouldn't it be more profitable to ditch it and use DirectX like everyone else does? Absolutely not. Because in reality, OpenGL is more powerful than DirectX, supports more platforms, and is essential for the future of games. It's common knowledge that OpenGL has faster draw calls than DirectX. And there's plenty of NVIDIA presentations to back it up if you don't take my word for it. And also, it has first access to new GPU features via vendor extensions. OpenGL gives you direct access to all new graphics features on all platforms, while DirectX only provides occasional snapshots of them on their newest versions of Windows. The tessellation technology that Microsoft is heavily promoting for DirectX 11 has been an OpenGL extension for the past 3 years. It's even been possible for years before that, using fast instancing and vertex texture fetch. I don't know what new technologies will be exposed in the next couple years, but I do know they'll be available on OpenGL first and foremost. Microsoft has worked hard on DX 10 and 11, and they're now about as fast as OpenGL is, and support almost as many features. However, there's one big problem. They don't work on Windows XP. Half of PC gamers still use XP, so using DirectX 10 or 11 is not really a viable option. If you really care about having the best possible graphics and delivering them to as many gamers as possible, there's no other choice but OpenGL. More than half of Appleshakeguru, which is their independent game, more than half of Appleshakeguru users use Mac or Linux. And we wouldn't be surprised if the same will be true of our new game, Overgrowth. When we talk to major game developers, we hear that supporting Mac and Linux is a waste of time. However, I've never seen any evidence for this claim. Blizzard has always released Mac versions of their games simultaneously, and they're one of the most successful game companies in the world. If they're doing something in a different way from everyone else, then their way is probably right. As John Carmack said when asked if Rage was a DirectX game, it's still OpenGL, he said. Although we obviously use D3D, it's a D3D-ish API, on the Xbox 360, and CG on the PS3. It's interesting how little of the technology cares what API you're using and what generation of the technology you're on. You've got a small handful of files that care about what API they're on, and millions of lines of code that are agnostic to the platform that you're on. If you can hit every platform using OpenGL, why shoot yourself in the foot and lock yourself into DirectX? Even if all you care about is Windows, let me remind you again, half of all Windows users still use XP, and will be unable to play your game if you use the latest versions of DirectX. The only way to deliver the latest and greatest graphics to Windows XP gamers, which is the single biggest desktop gaming platform, is through OpenGL. OpenGL is a non-profit, open standard created to allow users on any platform to experience the highest quality graphics that their hardware can provide. Its use is being crushed by a monopolistic attack from a monolithic corporate giant trying to dominate an industry that is too young to protect itself. As Direct3D becomes the only gaming graphics API supported on Windows, Microsoft is gaining a stranglehold on PC gaming. We need competition and freedom to drive down prices and drive up quality. A Microsoft monopoly on gaming would be very bad for both gamers and game developers. So can OpenGL recover? Well, back in '97, the situation was similar to how it is now. Microsoft was running a massive marketing campaign for Direct3D, and soon everyone just knew that it was faster and better than OpenGL. This started to change when Chris Hecker published the open letter denouncing DirectX. Soon after that, John Carmack posted his famous OpenGL rant and put his money where his mouth was by implementing all of id Software's games in OpenGL, proving once and for all that DirectX was unnecessary for high-end 3D gaming. This lesson appears to have been forgotten over the last few years. Most game developers have fallen under the spell of DirectX marketing or into the whirlpool of vicious cycles and network advantages. It's time to throw off the veil of advertisements and buzzwords and see what's really happening. If you use DirectX, you have to choose between using the weak, bloated DirectX 9 or sacrificing most of your user base to use DirectX 10 or 11. Now, on the other hand, if you use OpenGL, you get faster and more powerful graphics features than DirectX 11, and you get them on all versions of Windows, Mac, and Linux, as well as the PS3, Wii, PSP, DS, and iPhone. You also get these features in the rapidly developing WebGL standard, which may become the foundation for the next generation of browser games. If you're a game developer, all I ask is that you do your research and compare the figures and decide if OpenGL is a better choice. Some programmers prefer the style of DirectX 10 API to OpenGL, but you're going to be wrapping these low-level APIs in an abstraction layer anyway, so that shouldn't be a deciding factor. If there's anything about OpenGL that you don't like, then just ask the ARB to change it. They exist to serve you. If you're a gamer who uses Windows XP, Mac, or Linux, I hope you can see that DirectX only exists in order to keep new games from reaching your platform, and the only way you can fight back is to support games that use OpenGL. I think that's a great article. I'm trying to hurry up and get through it here. I don't want it to be too long, but I think this is a great article. And why in the world would you want to use DirectX 10 or 11 when half of PC gamers are still using XP and they can only go up to DX9? If you want your XP users to have the latest and greatest graphics, you have to use OpenGL. Or sacrifice your XP users and write a DX10 or 11 game and don't let XP users use it. So OpenGL is a no-brainer. Microsoft tells these people, if you build cross-platform games, we're going to pull support. We're going to pull funding. And I've heard this for many, many years, and I believe it's true. There's absolutely no reason somebody would use DirectX over OpenGL when DirectX looks just as good, just as fast, and arguably more powerful. And on top of all that, every single time they get features before DirectX gets the features. So why in this world would you use DirectX over OpenGL? To please Microsoft. That's why. So screw DirectX. I'm sick and tired of them acting like OpenGL is not capable. When you can write a game in OpenGL, id Software has proved it. You can write a game in OpenGL, release it on all platforms, everybody can play, and it looks just as good as a DirectX version. Whereas DirectX versions only let Windows people play. It just don't make any sense. It's just Microsoft's way of locking down the market and making you dumb, gullible PC gamers. Not all of you, just some of you. But the ones that are, they're making you, they're pulling the wool over your eyes. Here, use DirectX 10 because it's better for gaming. And when they fool you into that trap, then they got a lock on the gaming market. It's ridiculous. If we had OpenGL written in OpenGL games, everybody could play. But no, Microsoft wants to keep the PC games, or just the games in general, locked down to their platform. And I say screw them. What if Apple decided to pull iTunes off the PC? How many people would be pissed? And they just said, hey, use Amazon. You don't need iTunes. That's bullshit. And screw Microsoft for it. This has been episode 16 of the Applecast. I really appreciate you listening, and I hope you tune in next time.